earnestly for the power of the Holy Spirit to fall upon them. If I'm not mistaken, they had a Pentecost-like experience. They heard of wind, and they were all just struck by the Holy Spirit. And that began what was known as the Azusa Street Revival, otherwise known as the Pentecostal Revival, because their initial experience was very similar. They record much like that. Did it really happen? I have no reason to believe not that it didn't happen. God can do whatever he wants to get his grace to his people. And so it just reminds me, it's over 100 years old now.
That's what the president of the SCRC said.
Yes,
it was
yes.
from there, Dominic. You know the president of SCRC? Dominic.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So that began what has been known as the Pentecostal renewal within the church. And so I'm always reminded of that when I hear the wind. I like the wind. It also blows all the pollen away, so I don't get as allergic as I normally do. Couple of quick announcements before we get to our study tonight. I already told Patty and Evelyn and a few people that were here early. I've been thinking about it, and next week I would like to try and go back to our old ways. Yay! I knew you would like that. I'm going to. The difference is I don't want to be up on this platform. I said I set up the table roughly where I would want to be next week, and I'd like everyone to just gather around that so I can project onto the big screen. And during Christmas, or if the dais is being occupied for whatever, like they're having mass or something, we'll move over here. But we'll go back to the old way and see how it goes. So I know some, and I hope it's a good compromise, because I don't want to be disconnected from everyone. I like being close to everyone. So anyway, we're going to try that. The second announcement, and where did Alvaro go to the restroom? Well, I'll ask him to show it. Alvaro has some flyers for the Ignatian spiritual exercises led by Father Broom. He has some flyers to share about it, and he himself has gone through the spiritual exercises himself. Oh, thank you. Does that help? Does that help? Hello? Hello? Oh, I have to turn on the thing. Hold on. We'll wait on that. Thank you. The spiritual exercises of Ignatius of Loyola that I've been through has been through an organization called Miles Christi. Oh, thank you. These are the ones that he brought. Okay. And the next section, the next session begins soon, so you would have to, there's no charge for the course, the parish supplies all the materials, attendings must have a Catholic Bible, donations are accepted. Oh, it looks like that's what it is. Where is it meeting? St. Peter Chanel Catholic Church in Hawaiian Gardens. If you want more information, there's something on here. So if you would like a flyer, please help yourself to them, and Alvaro has some extra ones too. Okay. All right. So tonight, yes.
Can you tell us the story of the holy water that you put back in?
Oh, it's there's no real story behind it. It's extra holy water that I have, but I'm glad that you reminded me. I just want to share this with only you would understand this. Every now and then I have these I don't know how better to describe them. They're very powerful dreams. And I had one this morning, and I can't help but think it's something that I want to share with my spiritual family, so to speak. As you may know, I have a very deep affinity to Our Lady of Lourdes. I believe she helped me convert during this time. I know other people have affinities to Our Lady of Guadalupe or Fatima or some of the others, but for me it's always been Our Lady of Lourdes. And I remember in my process of converting, I remember one of the things that I remembered as a boy, I watched something on 60 Minutes, believe it or not, on their investigation of Lourdes. And it was the only thing that I ever knew about Catholicism when I was younger. And so when I was seeking the church, that apparition, more than anything else, really just sticks with me. I really have an affinity towards Our Lady of Lourdes. Well, I had a dream last night, and it was very moving to me. I have recently found out that the priest that helped me convert, I found this kind of incidentally. Actually talking to another priest, when I mentioned his name, he told me that he had been laicized.
He has been what?
Laicized. In other words, he's no longer in the ministry. And of course, your mind wonders, oh Lord, you know, what happened? Did something scandalous? You know, is he in a monastery? You know, what happened? I had no idea. Well, it kind of bothered me, so I kind of looked him up. I thought, well, maybe there's some record as to what happened. Well, there was nothing scandalous that I could see. He basically got married. So he got out of the ministry, and he's married to a woman somewhere, and that's that. And I was like, oh, you know, that it just kind of, it was just sort of like that. I mean, nothing bad, but I mean, it's, you know, those things happen. And so last night I had this dream, and in this dream I saw Father John. That was his name, Father John. And he was like drenched. He was like soaked, like he had been taking a bath in his cleric's collar. And I embraced him. And because I knew we were in Lourdes, I don't know how, but I knew we were in Lourdes. And I embraced him, and I just said, Father, share with me Mary's holy water. Because he was like drenched in it. And so I just hugged him, and I just, that's all I said. And then my dream flashed, and I saw Our Lady of Lourdes. So I knew we were in Lourdes. And what I remember, I just remember saying, I was almost in tears, you know. I was just saying, Our Lady, you know, pray for me, you know, pray for Father. He's no longer Father, but Father John. And I woke up, and I was almost, you know, crying about it. This was like around 3 o'clock in the morning. So I thought that was unusual too. And I went back to sleep, and then I woke up again at 5, you know, and so forth. But that was a very moving dream. And I just wanted to share that. So if you want to pray for him, please pray for him. Father John. He's no longer Father.
Karapi?
No, not Karapi. No. His last name was Provenza.
Oh, Provenza.
Father John Provenza. He helped me convert when I was back at St. Greg's. And we were about the same age. I was 26 at the time that I was converting, and he was a young priest. He had just been ordained and came to St. Greg's. And so his first task was to convert this ex-Protestant. Boy, there's a task. Talk about trial by fire, you know. But yeah, and he actually encouraged me to go into the seminary because we were about the same age, and I was, you know, studying to be a minister anyway. So he said, you should look into the priesthood. He was one of the first persons to suggest that. And so to find out that he's no longer in ministry, nothing bad, but he's no longer ordained. When he is ordained, he's no longer in active ministry. Once you're a priest, you're always a priest.
In the order of Melchizedek.
Yes, in the order of Melchizedek. His soul has been forever changed by holy orders.
Stop.
He may not be an active minister, okay, but his soul has been forever. There is a permanent mark, it is said, that is on the soul of a man who becomes a priest, whether they're active ministry or not, whether they then become married or not. So he's probably one of the few people in the West that now experienced all 7 sacraments. So that's a claim to fame he can make. So anyway, I wish him well. I would love to get in contact with him and just to say hi and just find out what happened. But anyway, so that's it. I just wanted to share that. I felt really blessed, especially at this time that we're entering into Holy Week, that I feel that I had such a blessing from the Holy Mother in this dream. And I consider it a grace, and I wanted to just share that with you. So I trust that when I said pray for me, I was thinking of all of us, but heaven only knows I need her prayers to get me into heaven. So I'm glad that Our Lady of Lourdes is watching over me. And please thank her for me, with me, in your prayers as well as we enter Holy Week. So anyway, what I want to do is I want to talk about this week that's coming up, that's going to begin on Sunday. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over what is going to happen between this Sunday and next Sunday. Because as I've said this before, and I'll say it again, we know more about what happened in the last week of Jesus' life, literally day by day by day, those last 8 days of his life, than we know about anything else about him. So there's got to be something that the gospel writers, that the apostles wanted to tell us about him that is so important. I mean, they left out his whole teenage years, they left out his young adult years, they left out his infancy, his everything. I mean, only 2 gospels even record that he was born, let alone anything else. But they tell us a lot about this last week of Jesus. So I want to walk with you day by day what's going to happen to Jesus. And that way you can follow him during this last week. I would hope or trust, if you would like, make it a little extra Lenten journey of yours. After this Sunday, or beginning actually with this Sunday, read through the Gospels, meditate on, spend a little extra time this week, and then Monday, do the same. Tuesday, do the same. Wednesday, do the, etc. All next week until Easter. As an extra, I don't even want to say it's a penance. It's not a penance. It's walking with Jesus on his last week. Does that make sense? Just make a little pledge to yourself. This week, I'm going to I will make time, don't find the time, make the time to sit and read these gospel passages on the days that it happened, so that you can follow Jesus in his journey throughout Holy Week. So let's begin with Palm Sunday. So it begins with Palm Sunday. And where in the Gospels do we read this? This is in Matthew 21, 1 through 11. This is also in Mark 11, 1 through 11. Luke 19, 28 through 44. And the Gospel of John 12 through 19. Okay? It's one of the rare times you will find the same event in all 4 Gospels.
Shall we read like that? Like Mark?
You could, but what you're going to do is you're going to find they're saying the same thing, except for John. John says it a little bit differently. I would pick either Matthew, Mark, or Luke, and then also John. Add John to it. If you read all, you can read all, you can do whatever you want. I would say read all 4, so that way you get all 4 perspectives. But the first 3 are going to sound very much the same. Very much the same. Why? Because these 3 are known as the Synoptic Gospels. Synoptic Gospels. Matthew, Mark, and Luke are considered the Synoptic Gospels. What does that mean? The word means a sin, like a synonym, What's a synonym? Same meaning, right? Sin is a prefix meaning same. Optic, what does that sound like? Eye, same eye. So they're seeing it from the same eye. It's the same perspective. That's why they're called the synoptic gospels. They see it from the same eye. Okay? John is completely different. John just does what John does. Okay? He's the rogue of the bunch. His gospel is completely different from Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Completely different. There's very little similarity between Matthew, Mark, and Luke to John. John is his own gospel. Okay? We'll get more into the Gospels as we get into our study of the whole Bible when we get to that point, because it's a very fascinating study. Scholars have spent centuries recognizing and understanding if these three Gospels are so alike, did they have a common ancestor? Did they come from a common source? Did one Gospel borrow off of another? If so, which one was first? Things like this. These are questions that scholars have been asking since the Gospels were written, from the very beginning. In fact, just a little side note, promise, just a little side note. The first church father to try and do what's called a harmony of the Gospels, that is, to try and patch all of the narratives together into one story, was a man named Tatian, and he did this in 270 AD in a work called the Diatessaron. The Diatessaron is basically the first harmony of the Gospels, trying to get one picture of everything that the Gospel writer said into one narrative. Okay? So even as far back as then, scholars were trying to piece together, because the Gospels, the way that they're written, they're not typical biographies. They don't flow in a very, there's a linear pattern to them, but when you read one Gospel and another, you can see that there were jumps one Gospel did for another. It's very clear that, like, Matthew will go in a narrative and then go to another story, whereas in Mark, it'll go here, there's a story in between that and then that one. So it's like Matthew omitted this. And you go, why? And it's like, well, yeah, why? And so these are the kinds of questions